where we delve into meaningful dialogues with leaders, organisations, and members of the community, aiming to address the multifaceted impacts of grief and loss. Today, we are having a courageous conversation with Katherine McLean, Director at the Hunters Writers Centre, who hosts the annual Grieve Project. Our conversation explores the multifaceted impacts of grief and loss and how delving into personal and often difficult experiences through various creative mediums can provide a platform for reflection and healing. Welcome to Courageous Conversations, Katherine. It's a pleasure to have you here with us today.
Thanks, Louise. It's really lovely to be here.
So to kick things off, we just wanted to ask around articulating our expressions through written word can be quite therapeutic for people suffering from loss and grief. But where does a non-writer even begin the process of getting the grief journey down on paper, or in this year's instance with Grieve 2024, other forms of creative expression?
Yeah, facing the blank page, whether you're a writer or a non-writer, storyteller or not, is always, I think, the most difficult thing to start with a blank page. Where do you go? One of the things that I use in my personal practice is a generative writing practice, which I think is a great start regardless of what type of storytelling you might be. And essentially the rules of the generative writing practice is you set a timer for 7 minutes, you sit down with your blank piece of paper and your writing tool, and you likely should have a writing prompt. So I often use writing prompts from poetry that I might find, which often poetry will have an introduction. Some that I find really provocative could be starting with the sentence, "I wish someone." And then you take that prompt and then you write for 7 minutes, and you try not to censor yourself, because all you want to do is just get your thoughts flowing, because a lot of the time we block up what we're feeling, particularly when it comes to grief. So the idea is to write for 7 minutes with whatever prompt you're using. It could be, "I wish someone." Another one might be perhaps in a different time, or "the truth is." And then you just start from there and go. Once you've finished the generative writing practice, you can look at your words and you might go, "Oh, that sentence is really juicy." And then you might take that sentence and you start again. So it's really about how do you move from the blank page. And it's very much keep writing and don't censor yourself.
It's great guidance, and it's very aligned with what we suggest to help seekers when they call our helpline, in terms of helping them process how they're feeling and their emotions in a different format than having a conversation with another person, such as journaling. So
Yeah.
really great prompts as well from a journaling perspective, and imagine what people can create just from getting their feelings and thoughts out on paper.
Because everybody's different, yeah. So you're never ever going to get the same story ever. And the practice that I'm speaking of, that you've got a timer set for 7 minutes, and it seems like 7 minutes is such a short period of time, but it's also a magic number. And if you kind of get stuck within that process, you just go back to the beginning and you repeat it again, which is, "I wish someone," and keep going. But at the end of that 7 minutes, something opens up. It's like there's some sort of alchemical process that opens up, and you've shifted energy in your body, which I think is probably one of the most important things when it comes to grief and loss.
Yeah, and quite cathartic.
Yeah.
So the expansion of the Grieve Project to include prose, poetry, and a variety of multimedia formats such as film, audio, graphic storytelling, and visual imagery is exciting. And we'll see such a variety of projects to be submitted. What was the vision for adding this diversity to the submission criteria this year?
Storytelling is such a vast way in which we communicate, and it's not just the written word. And essentially we acknowledge that in our modern world, our contemporary world, storytelling can be so many different things. I guess what we wanted to do was reflect our contemporary world, reflect the broaden the accessibility to the project. So young people, or some people mightn't relate to words on paper, but they do relate to music, or making a social media video, or etc., 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 and photography. And so what we wanted to do was open the concept of storytelling up to be indicative of how people communicate, and how images or music can move us and shift energy in us. So it is really exciting. It's the first year. We're just sucking and seeing, and we know that in subsequent years we're going to build on it, and I'm excited about the possibilities of where that storytelling process can go, and the reach it can go. Sometimes people don't read words on paper, they'd rather listen.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I too am looking forward to seeing all the different submissions that you'll be receiving this year.
I mean, oral storytelling is as old as time, or as old as humans, and there's things within that as well. So I'm looking forward to people sending in their stories spoken word, which will be fun. We'll see.
You definitely have opened up in terms of accessibility by allowing submissions to be submitted in that way as well. So and it may actually remove a lot of barriers that maybe people in the past may have wanted to be a part of the project, but didn't have the capacity. So yeah, it's really cool as well that you're doing.
We hope so. I mean, it's important. I think grief and loss is a shared human experience, and it's important that we can all engage in that conversation.
Yeah, for sure. So when the Grieve Project was launched, it made a big impact, and that has grown over the last 12 years. How's the concept filled a gap in the community? So, how do you feel the Grieve Project has helped those on a grief journey?
Grief in our society, our Western society, we don't often speak about it. We don't, it's not something that we share. It's something that we often will experience in isolation. And when we first started the Grieve Project, it opened something up in our community of writers in the Hunter region. And we understood it to be a really powerful process of expression, and so we opened it up to the nation. And what's happened is it's reduced people's isolation in grief. It's allowed for a community conversation around grief. It's allowed for people who may be feeling very alone in their journey to not feel that alone. It's enabled people to process their own grief and know that they have the potential to assist another person's journey in grief. So essentially, I think for me, the biggest impact of it is the reduction of isolation around grief and mourning and loss, as well as building a community conversation about grief and loss, and about the fact that it's a shared human experience, and that not everything is rainbows and glitter, and that we need to honor our internal experience, and also feel comfortable knowing that you're not alone.
Absolutely.
I'm not saying you have to share, I'm not saying you have to share with everybody, and so sometimes you don't have to share with everybody, you just need to process it out of your own body. But it's about acknowledging that grief and loss is shared process, a shared journey.
Yeah, and I think it really does help as a community address stigma and even if it's one person who realizes that in the expression of their own grief through written word, and even if it's in their journal and they never submit it to a project like Grieve, that they are taking steps towards healing through that expression, and then also hopefully being able to share that with someone else or another group of people may help them validate their own experience of loss as well when they read another person's story. It's and it does help communities connect and grow collectively through the process of loss. So in reviewing the submissions, you would be confronted, I'm sure, by many stories that you will be consuming about their individual's grief and loss. So how do you and your team ensure self-care is top of mind, as you process and, read the submissions, and I keep saying read, but with this year's submissions, so you digest, you?
It's a great question. And I think it's the same process as if you were experiencing grief and loss. So, it's essentially, how do you look after yourself? For me, it's an ongoing, you learn every day how you do it better. But for me, it's about acknowledging where I'm at any particular moment. So stopping and breathing, because oftentimes you'll just keep going. You just keep going and you keep pushing through, and you're not acknowledging where you're at. And so for me, it's really important to stop and recognize where I'm at in this process. And then for me, also, it's about shifting the energy out of my body. Often things feel really overwhelming or too big or so much. And it's almost as if your body can't contain that energy. And so for me, it's about how do I shift that energy out of my body? So, everybody's different. I love nature. Like, I think it's really important to be outside, to breathe outside air, to take note of the birds and the sun. And if you've got water around you, water is really an extraordinary healing energy. I do things like dance, just to move, because I think it's about whatever I need to do to kind of find space in my body to then keep on. Because oftentimes, if we don't acknowledge where we're at and have compassion for where we're at, then we just keep going and it affects us it's unhealthy for us. So I encourage my team to take breaks, to share, because I think community and relationship is also really important as well.
Yeah, for sure. So how do we further encourage people to consider sharing their grief journey in writing or visually as a coping strategy during difficult times?
I think it takes courage sometimes to sit in grief, and it takes a lot of compassion. Like, you need a lot of compassion for yourself, and to honor your grieving, like to honor that it's valid, to honor that you have every right to grieve, and to have compassion for yourself in your grieving process. I really do think that the creative expression is an extraordinary way of processing grief. And if you can find, if it's with a paintbrush, if it's with a pen, if it's with dancing, any way that you can express yourself will assist your process or assist spaciousness from that often can be overwhelming grief, I guess.
I guess, and in itself, that's an act of self-care.
Compassion and self-care. We so much more of it in our society.
I agree. I really do. So wrapping things up,
Mm.
how do people enter if they're watching this, listening to this, and they've never heard of the Grieve Project before? Where do they go to learn more and submit?
Certainly. The Grieve Project is an initiative of the Hunter Writers Centre. So we have on our website a page dedicated to the Grieve Project. So if you head along, Google the Hunter Writers Centre and go to our website, you'll find all the information about the project. And if you have any questions, you can just contact us and let us know, and we will endeavour to answer swiftly.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Katherine. It's been an absolute pleasure, and we had a great, courageous conversation today.
Yeah, thanks for that, Louisa. We appreciate Griefline's work in this space. It's really important work, and thanks for having me.